My fiance of 3 years cheated on me 2 months before our wedding day. Hi everyone, my story is kind of long, so please bear with me. For some backstory, my ex-fiance, currently 24 male, and I, currently 23 female, originally got together in late high school. We were complete high school sweethearts who were able to make it through the hardships of college and eventually got engaged on our 3-year couples anniversary. Since we were so young, we were engaged for another long 3 years, being together nearly 7 years in total, as it took quite some time to set up for a full wedding at a venue we both enjoyed. Weddings are crazy expensive. Now let's go back to about 2 months before our wedding day. I was about to have my bridal shower the next weekend, the non-refundable wedding payments almost fully squared away, and I was booming in love after a long wait. Our dream was finally coming true. This day, I happened to look over at his cell phone while he had the Snapchat app out and saw something that seemed odd. It was a women's Bitmoji with a hot name tag and heart emojis all around. I snatched the phone out of his hand to find out all the dirty details of him being in contact with her for months, where they would 6th hour each other every now and then. After an intense argument and a major life crisis moment, I had found out even more awful information on what he had been doing. He had been making secret accounts on Snapchat, Discord, Reddit, to meet both women and men, to text back and forth and develop relationships. I immediately went ballistic. Maybe not in my best headspace, but I called everyone in his family to let them know what he had done and that the wedding was now off. And basically a big you to everyone. I knew that if I hadn't let them know on what happened myself, that he may have spun things around and not admit the truth, to preserve his own self-image to his family members, I suppose. I was right about him doing so, because even after I had let everyone know, they immediately contacted me again, hating on me, claiming I was emotionally abusive to him throughout our entire 7 relationship and blaming me for not doing enough for his family. Oh, and to kick me down, just to lift him up. They set up a family vacation, and on one day, one of our breakup, they had asked him to join and be spoiled on, so he wouldn't be depressed about our breakup. Anyways, months had gone by at this point. I began dating other people. He stayed in his lane, and I became depressed throughout this big life change. Nothing felt all right until I started talking to him again. Please bear with me, but we ended up getting back together after getting back in contact to see where things would take us. No guarantees on where we would go. Fast forward to today. It has now been 2 years since, and we are working together, and I'm mostly happy. Ever since getting back together, he has shown great remorse, has spent many nights crying with me, has an open phone policy deleted, all social media, been active in both couples and personal therapy, and is actively working on himself for the relationship. Everything has been great. He's a better and more mature person now. In the 2 years of being back together, he has had no repeat incidents. My problem now is that he wants to get engaged again. He is promising a life for me. That my betrayed mind just can't believe. I know this may sound ridiculous, but outside of what happened, he is a great man on paper. He is a gentleman on dates, actively makes time for romance and time spent as a couple, makes me a priority over his family, who still hates me. Between takes care of our home with us, immediately comes to me. Whenever I need anything without question, he is a great provider and person to do life with. However, since us getting back together, I guess I had never considered the topic of marriage again. The idea of it is honestly traumatic to me now. The thought of being tied down to one person who could hurt you at any moment while still claiming they love you is a horrifying thought. I have since forgiven him, but I'm never forgetting. It has been 2 years since, but the pain is still well in my heart. It's confusing and conflicting because I see him now as a better man who has changed and grown from the situation. But is that enough? Will it ever be enough? I've told him my fears about getting engaged, and he understands my feelings and thoughts, and has said that if I need him to leave and let me move on, that he will do that if it makes me happy or brings me peace. It's so hard. If God himself told me that my partner will never cheat again, I might consider it because we could have such a good life outside of the past, cheating. Sadly, God can't just do that, and there is no way of knowing for certain. I hate that this man put me in the situation. If he never did it, things would have been so perfect. Maybe one day, I'll either learn to trust him again and fully stay into marriage, or gain the confidence to leave. Has anyone experienced a dilemma like this? I know many may want to say, just leave, but please have something else to add on top of it. If that is your advice, I'm sure some may know that it's oftentimes not that easy or simple. Thank you for your time. The fact that he is unreliable is obvious. Maybe he won't to sleep with anyone behind your back. Maybe he'll become a model husband. But you're right. You'll never forget betrayal. You'll never put up with his affairs. This is impossible. This is our psyche, and it does not depend on our desire. One more thing bothers me. This is his family. They will never stop hating you and will gradually find it possible to start poisoning your life together. They have the means and the time to do this. At the slightest unpleasant moments in a marriage during quarrels without, which no marriage is possible, he will begin to, consciously or unconsciously, seek their support, and then a small crack in the dam will eventually destroy it. If I were you, I wouldn't rush into marriage, and even more so with children with him. Wait a couple more years and see what happens. He, as well as his entire family, showed you who and what they are. You need to believe that, and you need to never talk to a cheater again. Never forgive, never forget, never reconcile. You're getting sucked back into a relationship with a cheater. You need to be stronger than this. He hasn't changed and never will because he can't. He is a cheater. You're going to wake up hating yourself on this one. Just walk away. Story 2. Recently got into my first relationship with a guy after dealing with bad trust issues due to past experiences. It started off from being casual, and eventually we both caught feelings unexpectedly and decided to give a relationship a go. He wasn't very respectful when it came to taking things slow, even though I had multiple serious conversations with him regarding it. For example, we both saw a future with each other, but I was uncomfortable with constantly having to talk about it because since the day we got together, he'd tell me how he can't wait for us to grow old together and move in soon, which was just scary, considering we're both young, and I don't want to think about that so soon into a new relationship. Every time I had talks with him regarding it, he seemed like he understood, but then he'd do it again. I also struggle with some mental health problems and every few weeks just need some space, and I get overwhelmed really easily. And I warned him about this before we ever got together. But every time I needed that space, he'd say how I don't really need it, and that we need to get through this together and not alone. Even though I told him how important it is for me to just have that extra space for a couple days. Because of this pressure, I would start having these depressive episodes much more often, which was stressful as its final season right now, and I need to be studying. He would send me paragraphs multiple times a day regarding how much he loved me, but it was written in a very overwhelming way, like just an entire paragraph saying how he can't imagine living without me, and how I've made his life so much better. Which seems sweet until you realize the relationship just started, and he does it every day. I just felt suffocated. Every time he would do something wrong, such as being unnecessarily rude to one of our mutual friends, or how I told him that. I knew he showed his ex's hot photo to his friends. He would tell me how much he hates himself and how terrible of a person he is and how he doesn't deserve me, and it would just lead to me comforting him. For the next hour or so, I didn't realize how toxic that was until recently. My friend thinks it was love bombing considering how soon it started after we got together, but I'm not sure. He would also rely on me for his happiness and say how he felt so empty before I entered his life and how he doesn't know how he'll live without me. Now to the deal breaker. One night, we all went out drinking to a local pub, and we were making jokes about having a three-way with one of my closest friends. The next day, I get a text from him saying how she agreed to one, and he basically started arranging it before I even agreed to it. We talked about having threesomes before, but this was so sudden and wasn't properly discussed beforehand. He convinced me by assuring me that this is only because of me being bisexual and having a preference for women, and how he still wants me to explore my attractiveness while I'm in a relationship with him. Therefore, I agreed he brought it up himself, how he would never do anything with her without me there because he loves me, and how no one could come close to me anyway. The next day before classes started, we all met up and made out a bit before going our separate ways. Turns out that since that happened, they proceeded on meeting up multiple times a day for the next week and make out and do vulgar things. I also made a group chat with all three of us, as I told him that I'm not comfortable with him talking to her alone about vulgar stuff, and if he could do it in the group chat instead, so it's more controlled. He agreed and said how I have nothing to worry about because he only loves me and he would never do anything to sacrifice our relationship. Turns out that was also a lie, as he proceeded to text with her for the next 3 weeks. I have seen the message, and they made me throw up the moment I read them. For some reason, it felt so much worse than them meeting up without me. I found out about all of this at 4 a.m. as my friend decided to come clean to me, except she didn't admit to her mistakes. She said he told her that I was completely fine with them meeting up alone, which was a blatant lie, as I found out later on, that she lied to me about where she was going and said she had a meeting multiple times. Meanwhile, she was going out to sleep with my boyfriend. She also said how she simply didn't think of asking me if my okay with it, which just seems like such bullshit, as she must have just not cared enough to ask me about it. She also said how, yeah, I thought it was weird how into me he was, which just boiled my blood, as she tried to act so innocent. Meanwhile, she was just rubbing it in my face, how much my boyfriend was into her. When I called him out on it, he made up excuses and tried to gaslight me into thinking that I gave him permission to do it, because he wouldn't have done it without my permission. Even though I had screenshots of him telling me he only ever messages her when it's small talk related, and how he wouldn't do things with her without my presence. The entire breakup, he made up excuses, saying how there was no love with her and how he loves me, and that he was only making sure she was into the idea of the threesome, and how he would have never done it if he knew it would hurt me. After calmly explaining to him in full detail why I am choosing to end things with him, and wanting to end things on a good note, and wished him the best of luck in his finals and life in general. And he then had the audacity to ask me if he can tell his friends that we broke up because of me wanting to concentrate on my studies as it's less complicated. I told him no, and to just admit that he's a cheater. And he said how he only thought of saying that because he thought it'd be easier for me that way. I just feel so betrayed by both of them. My friend convinced herself she is the victim and is mad at me because our friends cut her off because of this. I told him how important communication is for me, especially when it comes to something like the threesome, as it requires complete trust and communication, and I communicated all my worries to him, yet he hid something so big from me. I trusted him and I managed to open up to him, which I very rarely do, and he just threw it all away as if nothing happened. This all occurred over the span of December 2nd week of April, and he was cheating on me since the middle of March. I feel violated and was physically ill for the first week after our breakup and would just be nauseous and throwing up. I just needed to vent about this and have your opinions from an outside perspective. I hate to say it, hun, but your post is full of narcissistic traits between the both of them. I know this is a painful experience, but consider yourself lucky that you saw the red flags now and didn't ignore them before wasting months or years of your life. You dodged a bullet. Upon reading your post, I noticed a lot gaslighting and yes, love bombing for sure. From day one, he claimed he wanted to grow old with you. Red flag when the three-way came up, which between because he wanted you to feel free to explore your bi-side. That was his way of manipulating you. Anyway, you were very clear about what you were okay with and what you were not okay with. You discussed your boundaries with him, which was the smart thing to do, thinking he cared enough about you to respect your boundaries and that he had enough integrity to stay honest and include you. You thought she too was your friend. After they both crossed the line, to say the least, and stabbed you in the back, they then tried to gaslight you into believing that giraffes are purple and pigs can fly. I am not convinced that a three-way was ever really intended on his part in the first place. He was never a team player in your relationship. He just wanted to be a player and trick you into giving him permission and to only involve you in hearing about the replay. He wanted his cake, and he wanted to eat it too, and he probably never intended on sharing it with you. I am not saying they are, for sure, narcissists. I will say toxic behavior, for sure. Hopefully you will use this experience in the future as a little roadmap, warning you of the path you're on and that you're going the wrong way. The narcissistic traits I noticed are as follows. First and foremost, manipulation, which is how these types of people go unnoticed and get away. Most of their behavior falls under some form of manipulation. and they will eventually and always disrespect and ignore boundaries any and every way they can. Your particular story is full of gaslighting, to say the least, and love bombing, blame, shifting, and triangulation. When he was trying to turn your friends against you, well, there is a name for that too. I just can't remember it right now. But most likely, he was hoping to gather flying monkeys. These types of people never take accountability for their bad behavior and will blame, shift, and play the victim. They are always the victim unless they are gaining brownie points by being your savior or info to use against you later. It is always about them. They are very self-absorbed and they lack empathy. And since manipulation is what gets them around, these traits go unnoticed sometimes until it is too late. Thankfully, in your case, both of their masks slipped, showing you that she is no friend and he is not boyfriend. Worthy because neither one of them can be trusted. Again, you dodged a bullet. Never ignore the red flags, keep a journal. So when you are unsure, write it down. So when you need to compare your notes and your suspicions, you can always trust your instincts. Gaining knowledge about toxic people and their toxic traits, as well as trusting your instincts, will help secure your mental health and keep you from wasting your time and resources on things that will keep you from thriving. One more thing, and a red flag if certain vulgar experiences are not your idea, but instead ideas put into your head. Well, that is definitely a red flag. He thought he was so smart in his manipulation. Well, maybe he was at first, but in the end, you called him out on it and you didn't put up with it. Let him move on to his next supply. Good luck to you. That's a lot to deal with. People can be so cruel and selfish, as hard as it can, or will be cut the rope and move on. These two are not and never really were your friends. What a couple of, sorry, this is some straight up, evil, cruel. Take some time for yourself. Find your core and rebuild. Happiness and love are out there, and they will find their way to you.